I've learned to appreciate the emotion the more I grow up. I don't think I'll ever fully grow up, but that emotion side of me really helps me understand like what's working, what's not, what am I happy with, what am I not? And like from there, I can make sure it's something that's validated or justifiable, whatever the case may be, is to then be able to go, okay, well, what needs to happen and put a plan together. And that emotion is my motivator.
It's got me thinking about how people set goals. And so often people set goals that are very concrete, like I want to make X amount of money, or I want to drive this car, or live in this place, or have this title. And then they get those things, or they don't, but let's assume in this scenario, they get those things and they're just unhappy. I think a lot of times it's because they weren't aware or just the emotion of what's actually driving them forward. Their goals have gone from these tangible objectives to things that are more value driven. I think what's nice about that is you're acknowledging the importance of emotion in your decision making, and then everything else follows. So now your logical decisions are based on the emotions you want to get. So to kick us off, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Drew Brogden, and I'm a Cultivate Advisor. Basically, since we really started to scale ourselves, I think I was the last of the contractors before we went to like full employees. And now we've got, I think, over 40 employees now or something like that. We work with small business owners, advise small business owners, and help them navigate the rocky, turbulent times and the ups and down times of trying to grow themselves, whether it's as an entrepreneur or the business.
And do you focus on any particular types of clients or types of businesses within your own work?
Personally, I like to have a diverse portfolio industry-wise. I tend to find myself working with business owners that have at least 1 or 2 employees, but not really over that 5 employee mark. If I were to, define a certain niche, there's a lot of opportunity to grow both the business and the entrepreneur themselves, skill-wise and process-wise.
Like what makes you an expert to be consulting other businesses?
I would say first it's in my blood or DNA. Like I grew up, this is another weird fact. My grandmother was a doll artist. She sculpted dolls. She had 15 employees on a farm in southern Indiana. And my dad was the financial manager. My mom was head of ops, and we ran this doll factory. And then my biggest kickoff, the college pro painting experience. I knew I was always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I got after it right out of the gates. Love the concept of a franchise, give you the systems, the process, the ongoing coaching to teach you the fundamentals of growing a business.
How old were you when you got involved in College Pro?
So I did that 4 years, so 21 to 25-ish. School was just the harder you challenge yourself, the easier things become in life. So it was my mission in college to really push myself to really just get ahead of the game, if you will. So that was kind of my MO, and coaching, advising, supporting others to develop is a big passion of mine.
What are some of the biggest learning moments you had while you were in College Pro that still reflect and are applicable to what you do today at Cultivate?
A couple of things really stand out. The first one is deliver what you promise, or under promise and over deliver. My first year I just said yes to everything. I had never painted before, and it cost me a bunch, but I made sure I delivered on all my promises. And I think it stuck with me ever since. And then I learned what I was good and bad at, marketing, sales, financials, leadership, recruiting, interviewing, all those kind of fundamental skills that go with every business. It really taught me where I can dive deeper in or keep applying.
Does a specific moment in time stick out that you're reminded of a time you overpromised and couldn't deliver?
One time I was talking about how we're going to, this whole front door thing. And I had sold at least 20 jobs on we're going to paint your front door with a high gloss and a brush. And it took the first house in the summer to realize how bad it looked. The homeowner walked out there and they just started laughing. You do not know what you're doing, do you? And I don't. So I had to pay another contractor to come out and strip it and all that stuff. And basically I had to proactively call every client that I had booked for that front door paint job deal and said, we're gonna have to do this a different way. And they were all understanding. And as long as I was proactive and apologized and made up for it, it was all good.
Yeah, so that was one of those moments where you're like, hey, this is not what I expected. I'm definitely in a bit of a bind here. So let's take what I have and figure out the next steps.
Being candid, I think that's the other thing too, is just customer service or just people relationships as a whole. If you don't know something, don't say you do. Figure out the right answer and approach it. And it's just such a fundamental thing.
there's at least half of my clients I've actually become like friends with, to the point where I've gone to their weddings, I've hung out with them at barbecues. First, don't overpromise so you don't harm the relationship, whether it's client or even a friend situation. And then just be open and honest with them. The first thing that comes to mind is addressing risk, right? So like, you're going to a situation, lots of unknowns here. You're transitioning, changing in various ways, personal and professional. What is your mindset when you approach risk or a situation that might not pan out?
I try and be objective as much as I can. Fear to me, and this comes from like back in sport, I was a wrestler. It's a one-on-one sport. So it's like you're on the mat, there's no one else to hide behind. So I learned at a young age how to transfer that fear into like a signal of adrenaline and focus. So once I can make that transition happen, then I convert it into having a clear plan. If I'm not getting out of my comfort zone, then I'm not developing. That's just a big value of mine. I guess I haven't really had any risky opportunities that have come up that, I haven't taken, or it's probably just because I haven't been focused on them because I'm already in a big challenge or a risk in that moment.
Processes started with an emotional trigger. A book I was reading, Thinking Fast and Slow, it says you have two minds. You have your emotional mind and your logical mind. The emotional mind comes first because that's what the trigger is. It's something outside of the world made you think of this or push you in that direction, and then your logic kicks in. So it's so important to be aware of where these triggers come from or what starts it, and then having your plan can help you start to place that emotion correctly. So either separate it if needed, or understand like why or what factors it plays into your decision making.
I've learned to appreciate the emotion the more I grow up, if you will. I don't think I'll ever fully grow up, but that emotion side of me really helps me understand like what's working, what's not, what am I happy with, what am I not? And like from there, I can make sure it's something that's validated or justifiable, whatever the case may be, is to then be able to go, okay, well, what needs to happen, and put a plan together. And that emotion I keep utilizing to make sure the plan has follow through and conviction and everything else. That emotion is my motivator.
It's got me thinking about how people set goals. And so often people set goals that are very concrete, like I want to make X amount of money, or I want to drive this car, or live in this place, or have this title. And then they get those things, or they don't, but let's assume in this scenario, they get those things and they get there and they're just unhappy. I think a lot of times it's because they weren't aware or just the emotion of what's actually driving them forward. And a lot of people I've talked to recently, I've talked to lots of business owners through these interviews, some life coaches. The biggest thing that they've started sharing that they have in common is that their goals have gone from these tangible objectives to things that are more value driven. Stuff like, hey, I want to feel this way, or I want to get to this point. I think what's nice about that is you're acknowledging the importance of emotion in your decision making, and then everything else follows. So now your logical decisions are based on the emotions you want to get. How do you approach this with clients? Do you have a system in place, or is it very organic where you sit down and you just do a lot of listening? What are your first steps when you're talking to your clients?
It's a little bit of both, and it depends on the individual. I think that's what's fun about work with entrepreneurs, is everyone's very unique, right? It always starts there in the relationship. Hey, what are you working towards? What are the goals? If they don't have any defined goals, then I'm certainly going to help coach them to get like a version 1 of those goals. Because once we have the vision, then it's fairly easy for us to start breaking things down to pursue that vision.
So as a business owner, how do they go about identifying, one, if they need an advisor, and then two, what should they be looking for from an advisor? There's
all different sorts of need for an advisor. I am a big believer that any small business owner should have some sort of coach or advisor, right? Because we are naturally as entrepreneurs on an island a bit. So it's super helpful just to have that unbiased, not your significant other type of coach that can hold you accountable and help you think through problems out loud and everything else. So like, what are you driving towards, or what are you pursuing? Whether you have one, great. You definitely should have an advisor if you want to make sure you get there as fast as possible, want to avoid as much turbulence along the way. The way I look at an advisor is it's a co-pilot, right? There's turbulence, there's going to be ups and downs. Hey, sales are great this month, but then we can't figure out capacity the next, and then vice versa. It's an up and down game. So our job is to help make it as smooth of a ride as possible in pursuit of that vision.
For the people that say, no, I don't need advising, what are usually the biggest objections that they bring up when they decline wanting to have any type of advisor in their business?
There's a fear, right? And a comfortability factor. And I don't shy away from this. Anytime I offer someone like a free advising session or pro bono work, it's like, I want you to experience what it's like working with me, but I want you to know, like, I'm not here to just make all the answers or do all the work. Like, I'm going to help you make the right decisions, be faster and stronger and develop. But that also means uncomfortability. That also means accountability.
sounds like there's a sense of pride, right? It's like this thing that they built, and now they're admitting that they might need help with it. Or the other side of it going, well, now someone's going to actually be exposed to like all the stuff I do wrong, like, and potentially get
pride
judged
or
by someone else.
insecurity, one of the two. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the, just in general, some of the top benefits of having an advisor?
I love accountability to themselves to develop and do the things that they know they want to do. Because we all have that, inner voice that says, take the easier road.
Yeah.
And from that leads to so much more growth. Outside of that, I think a lot of times too, our clients come from a specific trade or have a certain set of skill sets. And that doesn't necessarily mean their skill sets apply in all the hats you have to wear as an entrepreneur.
Have you come across this often or seen either with your clients or clients you within Cultivate who do have trouble when they are scaling their business, when they do have to change that role from being, the solopreneur to now they have a team to now they have scaled and there's multiple levels in between them?
Yeah. I don't know how best to put this, but it almost comes in little stages, right? So Cultivate, we've been developing these stages of like the hustler is just a solopreneur and the experimenter has their first couple employees. So we've developed these stages because each stage has its own significant bottlenecks for the entrepreneur. The hustler, it's like, hey, you've got to learn how to do the work, but also have basically a part-time job, sales and marketing at all times. Experimenter, it's like, this is your first employee or two. This is the first time you've ever just relinquished control again to someone else. And boy, oh boy, are the learning curves so unique there, because it's, you've just never experienced what that's like and how to allow someone to take responsibility on things, give them the right roles, give them goals, but also give them space. There's so many dynamics. Again, we're dealing with people. And then we got the next phase where you're starting to hire your first leader of people. So now it's like, well, shit, I just learned how to coach someone direct to do a task or a job. Now I got to teach someone to teach others ongoing, all these things. The light at the end of the tunnel is there, because once you can get your leadership team established to then drive the operators of the business, if you will, that's where it starts to get fun.
Because I remember when I started the business, I was really strong on marketing and sales. So I went into the summer with a really decently large book. I think the second highest or the highest in my group at the time. I remember I was getting high praise from the general managers, like, oh, you're going to crush it, you're going to crush it. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to crush it, right? And then summer hits, and it turns out I'm a terrible leader. It turns out that up until this point, I had only been running businesses or doing things on my own. So this was my first time actually dealing with employees, contractors, and it turns out I had no experience or understanding of how to properly do the stuff. About 10 days into the painting season, I had all 12 painters quit.
That's a code red in the college pro world.
Overnight they all just left. I was like, damn it. After, in hindsight, looking back on it, that was a huge learning experience for me, in the sense that instead of taking a step back and going, okay, let me try and learn some of this leadership and start over, I immediately grabbed a brush and started painting, right? Because I was in crisis mode and I knew I could paint. So I was like, I'll just go do it myself. And I find so often that when businesses are trying to grow to the next level, they so easily fall back onto their old habits. They're like, I know I can do it, and I'll do it. So it's like, no, you have to stop, double down on your leadership here, teach these people, learn how to be a better leader. Because if you want to grow and you want to scale, you can't be doing the same thing you were doing before.